Hello everyone, I'm Shawnee and I'm here to share my recent trip to China. There aren't too many videos documenting tourism in China. The things I did were relatively unique. I didn't really go partying in Shanghai and hunt down Hermes dupes or whatever people think people do in China. So if you're interested in hearing everything from the famous floating islands to visiting the North Korean border, then please stay tuned. A little background, I was born in Beijing and my entire non-immediate family is still in China, but I haven't been back in a decade. I just really dragged my feet going back because I never really associated fun vacation with China. Places more like Japan and Korea, a little bit more westernized. Ooh, look at anime, look at that K-pop and onsen and skincare. But China just always felt a little bit more like a familial obligation, and COVID happened. I started out in Chengdu, which is where my mom's family is. It is the land of the pandas. My uncle and my grandma currently live within this airline factory community. So you have housing, you have markets, restaurants, and schools. I got glasses. I knew it'd be cheaper, but I had no idea that in under 30 minutes, I got an eye exam. I chose my frames, had the lenses cut, and walked out with my glasses. There was also hilariously a brand of glasses called Helen Keller, two things that the US could never. Our first sightseeing stop was in the Tibetan Highlands. There are two main parks in that area, which is Huanglong and Jiuzhaigou, and the relationship between the two parks, I would describe it as like Bryce and Zion, where Bryce is like the more condensed and smaller park before Zion, which is the real big main attraction. The main scenic area within Huanglong is 9.5 to 14,000 feet above sea level. They baby you. There's oxygen canisters everywhere to be purchased, and a lot of the hotels will blast oxygen into the rooms. So the highlight of Huanglong are these limestone pools that are formed by mineral deposits. The water is bright and turquoisey. My dad told me that back in the days, because this is not his first time coming here, you could walk straight up to the pools, dip your feet in. Well, obviously now just gotta admire the beauty from far away. As with most scenic mountains in China, there's a temple dedicated to a deity of some form, to whom I offered my protein bar, and I hope they appreciate the thoughts and the gains. The bathrooms have these digital occupancy boards. I was amused. They had squatting toilets and Western toilets. And what I found really interesting is that a lot of the people would rather wait in line for a squatting toilet to be available. The thought is that sitting toilets are unsanitary because it is much cleaner to just squat and not touch anything. Anyways, next up is Jiuzhaigou. It is famous for the unbelievably blue waters and the Alpine mountains. But the reason the water is so blue is because the lake have very high concentrations of calcium carbonate, and their water is very clear. Often the bottom is visible at a high depth. Jiuzhaigou translates to the 9 villages valley, so I think there were originally 9 villages. I don't know what happened to them. Okay, here we go. 7 of the 9 Tibetan villages are still populated today. Due to the protected nature of the park, agriculture is no longer permitted, so the locals now completely rely on tourism and local government subsidies to make a living. Okay, at least they're not opening casinos. The waters can't look like this if you're raising livestock, is all I'm saying. And it wasn't too crowded. It was still crowded in my opinion, but people told me that relatively this wasn't considered that crowded. Moving on, next we flew to the center of China. That is where we have Zhangjiajie. Whatever luck we had with the weather in Jiuzhaigou, we lost it. Started by going to Tianmen Mountain. It translates literally to Sky Door Mountain, but fundamentally the vibe is the gates to heaven, right? And people always talk about the staircase to heaven in Hawaii, but guys, this is the real staircase to heaven. Basically, a very wealthy guy built both these steps and this road and was like, we're gonna head up Red Bull and see how many adrenaline junkies they can send over here. There were photos and videos, base jumpers and parkour people going down mountains. But the cable car that takes you to the top of Tianshan is the longest and tallest cable car in the world, I believe. It is truly an engineering marvel. It doesn't look like the cables are attached to anything, and you're just going vertical and vertical, and occasionally you'll see this piece of skinny limestone shooting out from the sky, and then you realize, oh, that is the sole thing that this cable car is attached to. It's amazing. Some people might be like, oh, this ruined the nature and the tranquility of the place. It probably does, but for what it's worth, China is very good about picking one area and making that hyper touristy, and then the rest of the areas just get left alone. Because Zhangjiajie is not like Yosemite, where if you really wanted to go somewhere, you could walk there. These mountains are sheer vertical cliffs. If there's no engineering effort to get you there, you just can't see it. You're always trying to balance accessibility with conservation, and the accessibility is very good. There are people with dogs and wheelchairs up there. At the top of Tianshan, they basically built a small park. You can buy food up there if you need to. Anyways, we saw nothing at the top because it was so foggy. Tianshan also like turns into Burning Man at night. Like there's little light shows, there are little lasers everywhere. There's music playing, and then there's a little town that's at the base. It was super lively despite the fogginess of it. And I can see how fun this place would be during the Red Bull event. And the way it works is you don't walk down all of this. You do cable car all the way up, and there's actually, this is, again, an absolute engineering marvel. What they did is they drilled through this mountain such that there's 7 set of consecutive escalators that'll take you down through this mountain, and then you walk down the stairs, and then there is another cable car that will then take you to the ground. Then our last day, the day was completely clear, and I was like, we got 4 hours before the flight. I can run up there really fast. In the end, my dad went with me because I was like, Dad, come on. You gotta come. You're gonna regret it if you don't. It's just stairs. We'll make it through. Take it slow. It was completely clear. So beautiful. And so worth it. Now we get to the main attraction, which is Shengling Gongyuan, which translates to Forest Park. At the very top, we saw nothing. Supposedly, as far as the eyes can see, are these limestone pillars seemingly almost floating in the sky because they shoot up above the clouds. Yeah, we saw none of that. But as we get lower and lower, they start appearing. And I don't think it was just me trying to see the bright side of things. I think it was genuinely magical to have the fog. It made the mountains almost seem like they're alive, because you'll be looking at one place and it'll be pure white. And then out of nowhere, a mountain would appear before you, and you're like, wow, and you take your pictures, and then within another few seconds it's gone again, and it truly made it feel like I was walking through a fantasy movie. Oh, also, there were these monkeys. They were rude, but I was highly entertained, and I gave them a lot of my snacks. I couldn't help myself. The cute ones were really cute. A few hours away from Zhangjiajie is a small town called Fenghua, and it means Phoenix town. It's like this ancient city built on top of water. There's not much to do. It's just shopping, street food, and vibes, which maybe after all that nature is kind of what you're looking for. We stayed at a really beautiful boutique hotel, had a lovely breakfast, and you just, walked along the streets. It's very common to dress up like the regional ethnic minorities and have a photo shoot. There are these little shops that come with outfit, makeup, and photographer. Initially, I was like, whoa, these girls have some patient boyfriends. And I realized, oh, it's a photographer for hire. But it wasn't just the girls. The boys were fab too. They were doing it. The boys, the kids. After Zhangjiajie, we went to the North Korean border. We're all curious, right? So the China and North Korea border is separated by a river. And from what I understand, the river is just cleanly split down the middle between China and North Korea. And the China side has thoroughly capitalized on the North Korean border being a tourist region. You can take a boat tour, would take you right up to the middle of the river. We were close enough that we could see North Korean farmers, we could see North Koreans on their bikes, and we can see the North Korean patrol with their binoculars. The China side is literally this lady walking her 2 little poodles, and on the North Korean side, it's absolute desolate. Oh, yeah, and the funniest thing is you can eat Korean barbecue with a view of North Korea, which we did. You gotta look at all this with a little bit of humor. Yeah, it's kind of funny. So another thing, there was a gift shop, and this gift shop just had the flags of the 3 countries, and it sold North Korean, Chinese, and Russian goods. Truly the holy trifecta. After the boat tour, we went on a bus, which gave us even more views of the North Korean border. I remember my dad being like, it doesn't look that bad. It looked like China when I was growing up. I mean, probably true. They take you to significant stops, one of which was the railroad that during the Korean War was used to bring in troops and supplies from China. Then the last stop was, I would call this a visitor center, but you could look at the main bridge that connected China with North Korea back when it was still open. And then there, if you really zoom in, you can see some North Koreans sweeping the streets. My dad told me that back in the days when he came here as a student, they could actually go all the way up to the end of the bridge, just up to this gate, and they would throw cigarettes, chocolates, and other forms of contraband, and the North Koreans would happily catch it and put it in their pockets and then run back. Also, they had a gift shop there, and I purchased 2 bars of soap, which, according to the label, were handmade by the woman of North Korea. So I've contributed all 4 USD to the North Korean regime. You're welcome, Kim. If you look at the mountains of North Korea, they're really, really brown. And the Chinese side is incredibly green and lush. It's from North Koreans cutting down trees and selling it as lumber to China because North Korea needs money. And China preserves their own side of the mountains. Yeah. China also imports food from North Korea, which I find very interesting. We apparently had North Korean chicken. And then after the North Korean border, we headed back to the outskirts of Beijing, where my grandma on my dad's side is. And my aunt and my uncle have this amazing Sphinx cat. It was so friendly. And the skin, they have this velvety skin that was just so comforting to the touch. If it was possible, I would take it home. I think the highlight there was we visited the actual village that my dad grew up in. And from the photos, as you can see, we've come a long way. Oh, we've come a long way. My dad grew up in this house, and I visited as a kid, and there were no bathrooms. We had an outhouse, and by outhouse, I mean a very deep hole with 2 planks of wood on the side. I brought back the memories, and I saw this ladder, and I was like, oh, I think I remember climbing on this ladder. And I found a photo, and it's the same ladder. Isn't it crazy? It's crazy. Anyways, I think the only thing that shocked me culturally was how ID-based everything was. You associate your ID with every ticket you purchase. It's kind of convenient because like these tickets are linked to your ID. There's no such thing as the concept of a lost ticket. And my uncle's place in Chengdu, where they're within like that factory community, you don't even really need to pay with money. So you kind of give them your employment number, as they would just automatically put that on your tab. Every car that enters Beijing gets checked. It's one of those things that someone who grew up in America, you're like, surely they couldn't check every car that goes into Beijing. Now, they check every car that goes into Beijing. Good luck trying to be a fugitive in China. The cameras are everywhere. They're going to find your face. They're going to find your car. And that was my trip. I'm actually now really excited to go back. If I ever go back with friends, I can be a little tour guide. I hope that gave you some insights. I hope my commentary was amusing. If you enjoy this type of rambling, please subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye. It's a wrap. Oh my god, I've never talked so much in my life.